Lesson of the week. Let's jump in here. There's a question that I like to ask people, and it comes up every now and then inside of coaching calls, but it's a really good one. And it is, what have you stopped doing that once made you successful? What have you stopped doing that once made you successful? And I don't know about you, but give me a show of hands. Who in here was with KW back in the day of Camp 443? Anybody remember Camp 443? So Camp 443 had like this list of things. It was kind of like Ignite, but it was way more, it was like way ramped up. And I keep thinking about how if I had just never stopped doing what I was doing in Camp 443 back in 2006, I just wonder how big the real estate business would be. And what's interesting is about 10 days ago, it was the Thursday before last, I believe, we put out a post about giving away 2 free coaching calls every month. And we do that again to create content. But I had 72 people who registered for a free call. And part of the questions that I ask, the last section of it is, what questions would you want to have answered on a coaching call? And the vast majority, and I don't know the percentage, but it's over 50% of people mentioned how to be more consistent, And that led me on what I'm like in this exhaustive study right now about mastering the art of consistency, because I think that when you look at all achievement, it's going to boil down to the 2 M's. It's going to boil to mechanics and mindset. Mechanics is knowing what to do and how to do it. Mindset is taking what you know and doing it consistently over time. One of the things that I'm working on right now is creating a list of our usual suspects of excuses, because I want to see which excuse is robbing you most of your consistency. And we'll have that ready probably in the next 2 weeks. So I'll be covering that with you all either next week or the week after. You can hold me accountable to that. But I was listening to this one gentleman who conducted a study on 2,500 people. And all of them were to just keep one promise, a promise that they made to themselves. And the promises had a few rules, like they couldn't be like grandiose promises, and the promises were 100% within the control of the participants. So when you think about that, it's things like drinking a gallon of water a day, taking 10,000 steps. All those things are a little tough to do, especially every day, but they're 1,000% within your control. And what he said is that 2,500 people, they were to keep the promise for 21 days, 3 weeks, right? Out of the 2,500, only 58 completed it, 58. So when you look at that from a percentage perspective, if you take 58 and divide it by 2,500, the number is 2.32%. 2% of people keep their promises. And that was something small, right? And so when you think about this, it kind of begs the whole question behind, how do people change? How do we maintain the consistency of the changes that we are seeking? Now, a lot of you, especially if you've been in bold, have probably heard this quote right here. And it says that change happens when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change. Now, I would actually agree with this, but I don't agree with it wholeheartedly. In fact, this is what I believe to be true today, that pain is great as a catalyst, but awful for consistency. And there's this whole mantra, there's this whole thing. If you listen to TikToks, if you listen to reels about, oh man, you got to make the pain so great and blah, blah, blah. Like, that's all great, but it is a catalyst. It doesn't create consistency. It will start you on the journey, but it won't keep you on the journey, at least not most of the time. And so I think of it like this as it relates to the results that we're getting in our lives, that there's 3 lines that we're all existing in. So there's awful, which means we're well below the standards that we hold for ourselves. There's average, which is what we would consider to be okay. Like if I asked you performance equals potential minus interference to rate your performance, if you said average, you're probably going to rate it between a 5 and a 6, right? And then there's awesome. And awesome is where we are consistently proud. We are so happy with the results and the actions that we're taking over time. And so what happens, you guys, and I want to explain this before I go through this graph with you, is when pain is the only catalyst of change, you experience what is called the dissipation of drive. The dissipation of drive. Now, it has 4 steps. So number 1, 2, 3, 4. This is really important if you lead people, especially over time, because you'll see this in their behavior. And I heard another quote over the weekend that kind of shook my mind, because it said that when you look at the people who are closest to you, your unconscious mind is only unconscious to you. They can see your unconscious mind. You can't. Now, that's a whole other conversation for another time. Like, whoa. But dissipation of drive. So number 1, we hit a pain threshold. And what I want you to see here is on the left-hand side, we've got pain. On the bottom, we've got drive. So our pain threshold, like we're at a 5. And I always use weight whenever I use this, because it's something that a lot of people can relate to. But you look in the mirror, right? And maybe your clothes aren't fitting, you feel subconscious, whatever, self-conscious, I should say. Maybe you just don't feel that good. Your energy is down. And you get to this point where you're past the pain threshold and you say to yourself, I have to change this. So that's number 1. Number 2 is that you start taking action, right? You start eating better. Maybe you log your food, you're going to the gym. And after part 2, we get into part 3, which is you start to notice that your clothes are fitting a little better. Your energy is starting to come up. And so what happens is that, as if you notice, as the pain comes down, so does the drive. So as the pain becomes a 3, so does your drive. The pain becomes a 2, so does your drive. This is the dissipation of drive. And then number 4, what happens is your drive completely dissipates. This is why pain is a great catalyst, but terrible or awful for consistency, that when the pain subsides, your drive goes with it, and then the cycle just repeats itself, because now you've lost your consistency. You aren't doing the little daily disciplines that caused you to get out of pain in the first place. So the thing about it is, if you look at it like this, and this question, or this quote right here, is commitment is staying true to what you said you would do long after the mood that you set it in has left. Commitment is staying true to what you said you would do long after the mood that you set it in has left. So it begs a question. How do I stay true to my commitment? Really, what we're asking is, how do I stay consistent? How do I flip the fuel source from desperation, right? So desperation to inspiration. How do I flip the fuel source from moving away from to moving towards? Well, the thing about that is, what I've come to know more than anything else, and it's highlighted in that question that I asked you at the very beginning, what is it that you have stopped doing that once made you successful? To get from awful to average to awesome, the only difference between people who are awesome at something consistently over time and somebody is awful is that people who are creating awful or awesome results just never stop. They never stop the little bitty daily disciplines. They never quit doing those little bitty things that make all the difference. So I have a question for you. Number 1 is, what are your little daily disciplines? What are the little bitty things in your health, in your wealth, in your personal relationships, in your business, just those little bitty, seem so insignificant things that actually contribute to the compounding interest of your life. What are those for you? And then secondly, how do you keep yourself from buying into the excuses that prevent you from executing on those little daily disciplines each and every day, each and every week, and each and every month? Now, the answer to this is accountability, true accountability. And so the question is, how accountable are you? So 0 to 10, 10 being, I am going to do everything in my power to keep the word, keep the promises that I make to myself and to whomever else is holding me accountable. But I've never found anyone that could consistently keep themselves in that track of awesome without some form of accountability. And what I want each and every one of you to understand is that whether you're in awful or in awesome, it is not these gigantic leaps. It's not these big, hairy, audacious actions. It is these little bitty disciplines, these little bitty things done over time that will make the biggest difference. But what I'm asking you to really pay attention to is, if you're going to get out of desperation and into inspiration, what is it that you're moving towards? What is it that you are being pulled to? So you don't have to constantly be pushed by pain, because the thing about pain is that, as I showed you earlier, it dissipates. And it's a really, really shitty fuel source for long-term consistency. And all those bro out nation people on TikTok that make these great pronunciations, they don't coach people day after day, week after week, month after month. You can always tell the level of somebody's expertise by the questions you can ask them that they don't know you're going to ask them. And I promise you, you get a lot of those people on and start asking questions like, how do you create consistency over a long period of time? They're not going to have an answer. They have sound bites that sound good that create followers. So what are your little daily disciplines? What is it that prevents you from consistently doing that? And what is it that you're moving towards? People without a vision perish. What's yours? So I trust that this is helpful to you. If you would like the slides, we'll post them in the Maps Coach Jordan Facebook group today. And I would invite you to start answering some of these questions. And you guys, 2% of people keep their promises. It is so easy to be great. But greatness is fucking boring. And I promise you that for a lot of you, that's what's getting you. You're bored. So thank you all for being here. I apologize for my French today. Jenny made me say it. She texted me and said, drop an F-bomb. Her fault. And I will see you all on your coaching calls this week. Thank you. Talk to you soon.